if the work isn't energetic, that means you're denying something, or you're coasting, you're on autopilot somehow. You know too well what it is.
My name is Luke Neima. I'm the online editor of Granta magazine. I'm here today with George Saunders, and we're going to talk about his latest novel, Lincoln in the Bardo.
Yeah, basically, many years ago, I heard this story that Lincoln had gone into the crypt of his son just after the son's death, and had been so moved that he'd actually had some interaction with the body and picked it up or touched it, and it kind of grew to be narrated by ghosts. Part of the methodology is kind of these sort of samples of historical texts.
But those also kind of become almost like little voices, little dialogue forms.
Right. A former student of mine, Adam Levin, who's a wonderful novelist, he said to me, I think if you ever wrote a novel, it would be in the form of a series of monologues. And as soon as he said that, I thought, oh yeah, I could do that. Yeah. The real idea was just at any given time to sort of say, okay, I need a ghost stage left. There's a graveyard, look around and see who you hear and what you see and so on.
But it's also kind of historical fiction, so we're in the 19th century.
Yes.
So how did you approach that kind of change in diction?
One of the ideas is that if you have a problem in a story, it's a great friend to you. First I went, oh God, and then I thought, oh good, that'll be great.
It's a challenge.
It makes me stretch, yeah. I had this idea 20 years ago and had messed around with it a little bit, done some background reading. And at some point as I was telling the story through the point of view of the ghosts, it felt like I needed some historical stuff, because that's where the emotional push came for me, knowing the backstory. I asked myself at one point, how do you know the history? I'm like, well, I read it in history books. And some little wise voice said, well, just sample it, just do a data dump. So then it became really interesting the way that those sections could be used sort of to counterweight the reader's innate disbelief in the ghost. You have a chapter of ghosts with strange appendages and crazy stuff going on, and just when the reader's starting to say, I don't know, you bring in Doris Kearns Goodwin.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a great contrast between where those voices are coming from, but again, and structurally, the way you deploy them, that they're these kind of fragments.
And I like the deploy is just the right word.
Yeah.
And I think you're kind of in any fictive enterprise, you're sort of in a engagement with the reader's skepticism. It's natural that she would have it. Well, once you know that, you can kind of work with it a little bit and deploy whatever you have. Yeah.
I mean, the afterlife is something that comes into quite a lot of your short stories. I mean, usually at the edges. And I don't know, do you feel comfortable there? Was it something
I felt
you needed
really
to...
too comfortable.
Too comfortable.
But I think, for me, I had a story called ComCom in the third book. And I had a kind of a scene that to me had become a little familiar. It's a guy who's not married in the house with his parents. And I had written that scene before, and I just felt, What I did was I said, oh, his parents are dead. So it's even just that little switch somehow energized the scene.
I mean, what is the Bardo where these characters are?
Well, the Bardo is a Tibetan word that just means transitional state. So that was it's kind of roughly purgatory, except purgatory is a little stricter, as is the case in our life here. If you recognize what you are, you can sort of free the demons a little bit. So in this realm, if they can recognize that they're dead, they can leave. Also, if they can have some insight into the fact that their attachment to life is really not meaningful.
These kind of ghosts have to understand themselves and almost empathize with themselves in order to move on a more positive.
Yeah. And also they're in the same situation we are. They think they're alive and they're dead. Likewise. I mean, we think we're alive, we think we're central, we think we're permanent, we think we'll be here 6,000 years from now. So I guess if you had to make a connection, it would be that if we could more fully realize what we actually are, the world would transform. And I think a lot of our problems they might not go away, but they would be understood in a different way.
Yeah. And then there's this kind of parallel between that and what's going on in Lincoln's head at the moment when he's thinking about the Civil War and thinking about the human cost of that war.
Yeah. If you put yourself in the head of a father whose son is off to the war for union, I don't really want my kid dying for an abstraction. Let him go. Let the Confederacy go. You can make a good case for that, especially when you multiply it times 50 or 60,000. Meanwhile, down in the South, there's a kind of a quasi-genocide that's been going on for 200 years. That's unacceptable. So I think his position was really terrifying. There was no answer that wasn't vastly violent. And so when I finished the book, I had a very lively sense that the Civil War was still going on. Yes. Then the rise of Trump, and you see that those issues of racism and separatism and so on, they never went away. They always simmer a little bit and they come and go, you know.
What did you learn from writing this book? I mean, what was the biggest takeaway you had?
You know, so I think what I took away most was just a kind of a renewed faith in the vigorousness of art. That art is not some little side room we go into, but it's the human mind fully operative. So I hope to just go back to the well again and see how much I can find there.
Yeah, well, I hope you do soon.
I hope so too. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming in, George.
Such a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah.